Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. What if I told you that greatness, like true, undeniable mastery, is actually incredibly boring? Seriously, it's not some lightning strike of genius, and it's definitely not a genetic lottery ticket. Today, we're diving deep into the actual mechanics of personal mastery. We're looking at the architecture of habitual excellence. Because honestly, if you've been chasing success by waiting for that one massive life-altering breakthrough, well, you might be looking in the wrong place entirely. We are unpacking a profoundly practical framework today. One that maps out exactly how excellence is constructed, not in these massive leaps and bounds, but piece by piece, day by day. Let's get into it.
Aristotle laid it out perfectly over 2 millennia ago. He said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit." Just let that profound revelation breathe for a second. This single insight completely shatters the illusion we tend to harbor about highly successful people, right? We look at a master, a virtuoso musician, an elite athlete, a visionary leader, and we label their success as this magical, singular event. We only see the highlight reel, so we just assume they performed some heroic act that skyrocketed them to the top. But the reality is way more grounded. Excellence is a mechanical reality. It's a continuous, relentless loop. It is the quiet, totally unglamorous repetitions done in the dark when nobody's watching. It's literally never an act. It is always a habit.
Section 1. The habit of excellence. Moving beyond the single act. Excellence is a result of our habits. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that every single outcome you currently have or that you deeply desire to have is simply a byproduct of your routines. Think of it kind of like compounding interest in a bank account. A single dollar deposited doesn't really look like wealth, does it? Just like a single healthy meal doesn't look like fitness, but stacked up over time, the math becomes undeniable. If we want a completely different result in our lives, we can't just obsess over the finish line. Staring at the finish line literally does not move you a single inch closer to it. Instead, we have to fundamentally re-engineer the daily habits that inevitably lead there. The outcome is fixed by the process. If you fix the assembly line, the product just fixes itself.
Section 2. Life in miniature. The macro built from the micro.
So here's a stark reality for us. Our grand life is actually just a miniature version of our daily habits and rituals. We so often trick ourselves into believing that our real life is this separate, sprawling epic of 80 or 90 years, hovering somewhere way out there in the future. We kind of think we'll suddenly step into this grand narrative when we get the big promotion, or move to the new city, or finally find the right partner. But that grand life? It isn't some mystical entity waiting for you. It is quite literally just a miniature version of what you are doing on a random, unremarkable Tuesday, scaled up over a few decades. How you spend your average Tuesday is how you spend your life. So if you really want to know what your grand life ultimately looks like, you don't need a crystal ball. You just need to examine your daily rituals.
Which brings us to a truly fascinating definition of identity itself. Who we are is the result of repeatedly following certain patterns and doing certain activities regularly. We usually treat identity as a noun, right? Like it's something static, something we just inherently possess. But behavioral psychology suggests identity is actually a verb. You are constantly building yourself through your actions. When you sit down to write every morning, you aren't just performing an activity. You are casting a very real vote for your identity as a writer. By following certain patterns, you are actively choosing who you are becoming. Your character isn't formed in the fiery crucible of some massive one-time crisis. It's forged in the mundane, repetitive choices of everyday life. The activities you do regularly are the literal building blocks of your character.
All right, Section 3, the repetitive mind, the unseen patterns.
So, how do our thoughts shape our choices? We spend an enormous amount of energy obsessing over the physical actions we need to take. What to eat, when to work out, how many emails to send today. But what about the invisible machinery actually running the show? Think about that incredibly familiar sensation. Your alarm goes off at 6 a.m., and before your feet even touch the floor, this massive wave of rationalizations just washes over you. Oh, I didn't sleep well. I'll just work out tomorrow. Just 5 more minutes. That automatic thinking, it happens before you even move a single muscle, and it completely hijacks your entire day. The repetitive thinking we indulge in impacts the decisions we take in our daily lives. Our unseen mental habits are actively dictating our physical, real-world choices. Look, the human brain is incredibly lazy by design. It wants to run on autopilot as much as possible just to save energy. It's essentially a highly advanced predictive text algorithm. If you consistently indulge in repetitive loops of doubt, fear, or procrastination, your brain just assumes that's the language you speak. Those invisible mental patterns will directly impact the very visible decisions you make every single day. You can't just change your workflow or your calendar. If your underlying mental operating system is still running a bug of self-doubt, the physical system will eventually crash. Mastering excellence fundamentally means mastering that repetitive internal monologue.
Section 4. The path to mastery. The blueprint for excellence.
To reach excellence, give extreme importance to repetitions, practice, and trying again and again. I want you to pay really close attention to the phrasing here. It doesn't say give moderate importance. It demands extreme importance. Why? Because when we only give moderate importance to our practice, we get moderate, totally average results. Mastery is fundamentally a numbers game. It requires a massive, almost irrational volume of output. If you look at the greatest creators, athletes, or thinkers, their archives are just absolutely filled with thousands of terrible drafts, missed shots, and failed experiments. The sheer volume of repetition, the absolute dedication to practice, and that stubborn willingness to just try again and again, those are the non-negotiable foundations. Mastery isn't about somehow avoiding the mud. It's about being entirely willing to wade through a massive volume of it until you finally find the gold.
And this brings us to a brilliantly simple sequential formula. Step 1, practice and repeat. Step 2, experience failures. Now, notice that failure isn't categorized here as a mistake or a glitch in the system. It's a mandatory, entirely expected step. Then, step 3, learn from failures. And finally, step 4, try again without losing enthusiasm. Honestly, that final point is the absolute key to the entire equation, because anyone can grit their teeth and miserably try again. But trying again without losing enthusiasm after falling flat on your face, that is the true elusive architecture of habitual excellence. Winston Churchill famously described success as stumbling from failure to failure with absolutely no loss of enthusiasm. That emotional resilience, that unique ability to protect your passion from the bruising reality of making mistakes, that's the secret sauce. That is precisely how the masters separate themselves from the crowd.
So I want to leave you with this final, lingering thought. If your life really is just a miniature version of your daily habits and rituals, what are you building today? Look closely at your repetitive thoughts. Look unsparingly at the actions you've taken just today, just over the last few hours. Are they constructing the excellence you desire, or are they quietly cementing an identity you actually want to escape? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I highly, highly encourage you to go audit your own routines right now. Start consciously building the random Tuesday that you want your entire life to look like. Catch you next time.